Hello plant tribe, and how are all of you doing today? So for those of you who are new here, hello, welcome. It is lovely to meet you. My name is Nikki and this is my channel, Plants, Pots, and Whatnots. And for all you crazy kids that are returning like gluttons for punishment, welcome back. It is amazing to see you as always. So the amount of messages that I have received in regards to this little beauty right here is crazy. I have gotten messages on Instagram and on YouTube and in person. And so I have been putting together an entire video strictly based on this plant, and today is the day. This is the day that it all comes out. So that is what we're going to chat about today, is the complete, as much as possible, care guide for the beautiful Cissus Discolor. So if that sounds like something that you'd like to stick around and watch, then please stick around and watch. Would you believe me if I said it was just orange juice? I'll never tell. Okay, so I have a lot to get through in this video. I do have a lot of notes here. I wanted to make sure that I included as much as possible to make sure that you are informed as possible. Now, I will preface all of this video by saying that not all of the information that I have found on this, because aside from my own personal experience, I did do some research on top of that so I could really make this video as well-rounded as possible. Not all of the information that I've found do I agree with. So when I get to those parts, I will definitely let you know, here's what the experts say, and here's what I have actually done and seems to work. Keep in mind, I will also preface this video by saying my home is totally different than yours, than yours, than yours, than yours, you know what I mean? So depending on your home conditions and where you're located in the world, I mean, what I'm telling you might be not the same. It's gonna be pretty similar, but everybody has different experiences, right? So I'm gonna tell you what the information I found on it was, and then again, I will tell you what I have personally experienced in regards to this guy. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start right at the name. So a lot of websites that I've found actually refer to this as a Cissus Discolor. That's right, with a K. I honestly have never heard anyone I have never heard anyone speak the name of this plant by saying Cissus Discolor. I don't think I ever will. Even if that is the true name, I will always know it as the Cissus Discolor. So I want to know from you guys, do you call it a Cissus Discolor? Or do you call it a Cissus Discolor? So this plant actually originates on the island of Java, like the coffee, in Indonesia. And it grows in rainforests. And I'm gonna throw some footage in here as I go. Here is where Java is located. It is a beautiful island in Indonesia. And after doing the research for this video, I now have a new place on my bucket list. I would love to go visit here. It looks absolutely beautiful. So these do grow in the rainforests in Indonesia on this particular island called Java. So it's not hard to see why this plant has become so popular. It has these beautiful, long, heart-shaped leaves, and it has this beautiful silver coloration. And I think anybody who just looks at this plant goes, dang, that's a pretty plant. And I tend to agree. So along with the silver, let me see if I can show you here. I'll insert footage anyways. But these are some newer leaves, and it's not really gonna pick up on photo, so I definitely will put footage in here of this. But when the newer leaves come in, they have this extremely gorgeous, it's kind of like, what color pink is that? Like a fuchsia? We'll go with fuchsia. And it's just a beautiful color. And again, like I said, I'm not sure if it's going to translate on camera or not, but and to me, that is one of the things that just gets me like, whoo, because it is so incredibly beautiful. So you have those dark green leaves, and they do turn a darker green, if you can see that. And then the silver and the pink. I mean, green, silver, and pink. You can't get much better than that, right? So the Cissus does grow the best in container type environments. So you can have it in a hanging basket and let it trail down, or up a pole, or on a trellis, or along a fence, depending on where you live and that kind of thing. So it's a really versatile plant, which is really handy. It fits into many different situations in your home or in your landscape. The plant belongs to the Vitaceae family, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, which is actually the grape family, which consists of about 350 different species of plants. Also, due to the coloration and just the gorgeous leaf color and markings and that kind of thing, the plant is also often referred to as a Rex begonia vine. In actual fact, it's obviously not a begonia at all, but it's just kind of got the look of a begonia because it's the beautiful colorings and patterns and that silvery and the pink. And so that is its other name. So if you ever see the term Rex begonia vine, know that they're speaking of the Cissus Discolor. So, as any of you know that perhaps have this plant, it can be a little bit tricky to take care of in your home. So, I'm going to do the best that I can to give you the best possible care tips for this plant in hopes that I can even be a sliver of help to you at keeping your Cissus Discolor alive. So, let's jump into care tips. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is size and growth. So, as you know, this is a vining plant, and this plant can actually get 6 to 8 feet tall, which is totally wild. Once it gets too much further than that, it tends to become a little bit more leggy. You might get smaller leaves. So if you want to keep your plant full and bushy, it's best to kind of keep it trimmed and trellised. If you want it 8 feet, great. Invest in an 8-foot trellis. So the other thing that I read, and here's one of the situations where I don't necessarily agree with the information that I read, is that I read it's a medium grower, so it's not a super fast grower. I would have to disagree with that. This plant, for me, has grown like crazy. It has grown so fast. I'm talking, I can look at it one morning, and if you've been with me for a bit, you'll know that I have it on my shelf. I call them my Home Depot racks. And it had grown up and out the top of the rack and was growing across the back of the shelf. Well, I would look at it in the morning and it would be like here. And then I'd go back like in the evening and it had grown like another couple inches. So I tend to lean on the side of, I call BS on the medium growth kind of thing, because in my experience, in my home, this thing grows like a beast. So given the right conditions, this plant can last for many years. This is one of those plants that if you take care of it properly, you know, you can hand it down to your children, give cuttings to everybody and their dog if their dog collects plants. Anyways, so it is one that will really last and last. Especially if kept outdoors, if you're in an area, and we will get to that, where you're able to do so. So I think these leaves are really the big draw on why so many people really do enjoy this plant. You have these long heart-shaped leaves, and the color of them just is absolutely stunning. The leaves can get about 3 to 6 inches long, which is totally crazy. I have one over here. Let me oh, pardon me. I have one here, and I'm not sure. Like, that's a pretty decent sized leaf. It is the size of my hand. And I mean, I have like kind of small hands, which is totally unproportionate to my body, by the way. But anyways, moving along. But that's still a pretty big leaf. Now, I would say that leaf is maybe 4.5 inches. So they can definitely get bigger than this. Like I said, up to 6 inches, which is totally wild. So again, when the leaves, I just bit my tongue. So again, when the leaves first come out, they come out this really pink color and with that silver marking, and they're so soft. If you're a leaf petter, it's a good one for you. But over time, that pink fades and they turn into, it's almost like an olive green. I'll insert a closer photo so that you can see all of this stuff better. The veins themselves actually stay that fuchsia color, although it deepens a little bit to like almost a burgundy. I'll try to get a picture the best I can to show that to you. But it does retain that beautiful silver markings. And I mean, in either form, it's a stunning leaf. Also, the stems, leaf stalks, and underside of the leaves are all this gorgeous burgundy color. Not sure if that... There, you can kind of see it. I'll insert footage. This is not gonna work. Anyway, and that does remain, for the most part. Older stems actually turn to more of a woody kind of look and texture. But the newer stems are all that beautiful burgundy color that we all love so much. So this plant will actually flower, but the likelihood of any of us seeing this plant actually flower indoors is unlikely. The flowers are kind of neat, but rather insignificant. Here's a photo of what they look like. Kind of neat. But again, if you're growing this plant indoors, it's likely that you will never see a bloom. Okay, so let's move on to light and temperature, because I think that's where a lot of people are gonna kind of struggle. We'll say struggle. So the Cissus Discolor vine needs bright light and warmth. Now, I have read that it can take, that it likes shady spots. Again, I completely, totally, and utterly, did I stress that enough? I totally disagree with that. When I first got it home for the first, goodness, I don't even know, 4 months, 5 months maybe, I had it, it was near a grow light, but it wasn't a super bright area. I heard that if you keep this in super bright light, it's gonna go crispy on you. So after having it for that long and it not doing anything, I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna try something new, because that is what we do as plant parents. If something doesn't work and it's not working, move it. Try something new. Worst case scenario, it's gonna start to decline, move it back. The roots are still gonna be fine. It might take a little while to snap back, but you're not gonna lose really much of anything by trying something new for a plant that's already not doing well. If that makes sense. So, what I did with this plant is I moved it right to my south-facing patio door. Now, granted, this particular location doesn't get all day light just because of how, I just bit my tongue again, just because of how my house is situated, but it does get blasted with direct sun for a good 6 hours. Well, maybe not 6 hours, maybe 4 to 5 hours. And then decent light onward. And it really started picking up speed at that point. And I was like, huh, okay. So at that point, we were starting to get leaves on the trees outside, or buds at that point. And I was like, you know what? This is going to be shaded fairly soon. I need to do something to get it back into bright light. So what I did was I took it and I stuck it in this spot, and I'll show you again a photo. And it is literally like maybe 3 to 4 inches underneath my grow light. And these are really decent grow lights. They're not like super crazy high-end, blind you. Well, they might blind you. They are pretty bright. And it wasn't until then that it really took off. And this is where it has been. It is right beside my humidifier. Well, we'll get into humidity. I'm kind of jumping out a little bit. We're talking about light. And it wasn't really until I moved it to a bright light situation, like a direct light situation, that it really started doing well. So if you have a Cissus and you've heard that it takes medium to indirect light and it's not working for you, move it directly under a grow light, move it into like a southwest facing window. They enjoy really bright light in my experience. If you want to grow this plant outdoors, it is winter hardy from zone about 11 upwards. The ideal temperature for them is about 21 to 27 degrees Celsius and 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is throughout your spring and summer months. During the winter times, you want to keep it between 18 to 21 degrees Celsius or 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So outside of its native climate, where you have a zone 11 sort of situation and upwards, you're best to grow this plant indoors. Or alternatively, you could keep it outdoors as long as the temperatures remain somewhat similar to what I just told you, and bring it in the cooler months. Okay, so now let's move on to watering, feeding, and humidity. So in my experience, this plant does not like to dry out. It does like to stay fairly moist. Now, I'm not talking soggy. Don't overwater the plant. I would probably water the plant when the plant gets to about a 4 on my moisture meter. So anyways, you definitely don't want this plant to dry out completely. If it does get completely dry soil, you definitely at that point will start to see crisping and drooping and leaf drop. Not a good scene for anyone. So as far as fertilization goes, you definitely want to fertilize this plant every 3 to 4 weeks. So in my home, that is every other watering. So I fertilize my plants with Miracle-Gro fertilizer, the liquid fertilizer. And so basically what I would do is if it would get dry in between those, and I check my plants usually every 4 to 5 days just to make sure. If it hasn't been 3 to 4 weeks, or yeah, if it hasn't been around 3 to 4 weeks since I fertilized it, what I'll do is that in between watering, I will give it some Marfil soil enhancer, and my plants absolutely love that stuff. I know you guys have heard me talk about it before. I know it's not new, but it has all those micro and macronutrients that your plants just like. In the winter time, you definitely want to rein in on your watering. You want to let the soil at that point almost completely dry out and water it. Now, some places I've read say continue to fertilize it, but probably every other month sort of scenario as opposed to every 3 to 4 weeks. So that's something that's going to kind of depend on you. If you're a fertilizer anyways, do it. Not do, I don't know. Anyways, me personally, I do fertilize over the winter as long as the plant is growing. If I can see active growth on my plant, I will continue to fertilize it, but probably at about a half of what I would normally give it in the spring and summer. Okay, on to humidity. Now, I'm sure that one of the things that you've probably heard about the Cissus Discolor is that it appreciates extremely high humidity. You're not entirely wrong in that regard. Now, I will say that when I had it over by my patio door, when it really started to do well, it was not overly humid there. It wasn't near a humidifier. In fact, my humidifier was probably a good 15 to 20 feet away. And so I would say it probably sat in about 40 to 50% humidity, and that's when it really started to do well. I don't know. But when I moved it over to my Home Depot rack, it was actually situated directly beside one of my Levoit humidifiers. And so, do I credit its doing well to humidity? Not really. But for the most part, my home doesn't get super dry. I do have 3 humidifiers running, so when the moisture level in the air dips below about 50%, my humidifiers come on to kick it up a little bit. So I would recommend keeping it above 50%. I wouldn't let it get too much lower than that. At that point, you might start to see drooping, crisping, dropping leaves, and that kind of thing. Okay, so now let's move on to soil and transplanting. Your Cissus Discolor likes a rich potting soil that's a little bit more on the peaty side. Is peaty a word? I don't even know. But you want to make sure that you include an amendment such as perlite to give it a more well-draining property, because it doesn't like to sit in soggy soil. And a potting soil that has very few amendments in order to make it well-draining will just suffocate those roots, and it just becomes too dense. And for the majority of indoor plants, that's a killer. So as far as repotting is concerned, depending any massive growth, I mean, obviously when you first get the plant, especially if you just get a cutting, you know, you can slowly increase pot size. But once your plant gets to a decent size, I'm actually going to repot this guy. So it's in, I think this is a 6-inch plastic pot. We'll go with 6-inch. I think it's a 6-inch. So I'm gonna actually up pot that soon to about an 8-inch, maybe a 10. We'll see what I have available. And then that should probably be okay. So after that point, you definitely want to repot at least every 2 years, just to keep that soil fresh. Over time, soil loses its natural nutritional value and just becomes like dirt at that point. And so it is good, and that goes with any house plant. I would highly recommend repotting all house plants, regardless of whether you need to up pot them or not, to a new fresh soil at least every 2 years. Okay, let's move on to grooming. Really, your Cissus doesn't require a whole lot of grooming. It doesn't need to be pinched back. Basically, the only time you're really going to cut this plant is A, if you're propagating it, or B, if it, you know, it's growing too long or it's going too leggy, or you like a particular shape or length or whatever. It doesn't need any other grooming on top of that to keep it healthy. It's just not a plant that requires it. Okay, and I think this is probably the last topic, is propagating. So to propagate your Cissus, I have read from numerous websites that it's better to propagate with the woodier, older vines on your plant. So see if I can get a close up here. So you see these ones, how they're a little bit more woody looking and kind of brown. It says to use those rather than the newer, like burgundy or red vines. I have actually done it with both, and both times have been reasonably successful evenly. What? I haven't noticed a difference. They both rooted, they both grew roots, and about the same rate. So I don't know, do that with that information as you will. How I prefer to propagate this plant is in water. I haven't tried spag moss yet, but I'm really leaning towards spag moss for a lot of other propagation, so maybe I'll give that a shot just to see how it goes. But basically I just go ahead and snip between nodes, so between growth points of the leaves. You can't even see that. So it'll be like right here. You meant what I knew. Anyway, and then I kind of just take the bottom leaves off, stick it in a prop jar or whatever you propagate in, and let it root out. It's basically as easy as that. Now you can also propagate it in soil, whatever you prefer really, whatever your method of propagation is, and try different things. Try spag moss, try water, try soil. You know, whatever works for you and whatever you're comfortable with. They actually do root rather easily. It might take a little bit longer. It's not going to root as fast as, say, like a pothos or something like that will. It does take a smidgen longer than that, but it's definitely doable. Yeah, I have a couple propagations that I took of this, and they are growing just as crazy as this one. So when I go ahead and repot this guy into the larger pot, I'm going to take those ones, stick them back in the pot, just to get a fuller vine, and then I'm going to put it on one of those like trellises that have the two loops crossing. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what I'm doing. What is this? Anyways. Anywho, I think that's about all the information that I have for you today. So I think my biggest takeaways, if I could give you anything to take away from this video that you didn't already know, is bump up your light. Mine is loving it. Make sure that your humidity is above 50%. Keep it in a nice, well-draining soil mix. Don't let it dry out. And that's probably the best advice that I can give you. I think those are really your keys to success as far as taking care of this plant and having it thrive and look beautiful as you know they can look. Anyway, I hope this video was even marginally helpful for you. I tried to put as much information in there as possible, and I tried not to be as tangenty and rambly as I normally am so that I could get the information across to you in a timely fashion. Although, I will tell you, I did a poll on my Instagram and it turns out people like longer, chattier videos. Who knew? Anyway, that's my personality, so that's just what you're gonna get. But I tried to keep this one a little bit more informational, direct to the point, because I think it kind of required that. And here I go, rambling on. Anyways, I'll go ahead and wrap up this video. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed already, please consider doing so. It is a huge help to my channel, and I definitely appreciate it. So, that is all I have, and I will go ahead and say goodbye. So thank you guys so much for liking and commenting and watching and subscribing. I love you all to bitty bits, and I will see you in the next one. Mwah!